following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back without George Grimm this time. The show is Comfortably Zoned in a Vat o' Pine Tar. It's a podcast about the book that George Grimm and I wrote. And the best part of it is talking to people who read the book and who appreciate it on one level or another. You don't have to like it, you don't have to love it, but we recommend that you learn from it, and certainly that you buy it and give it as a gift to some of your fanatical baseball friends. They will appreciate it. Claire Hall, Elizabeth Hall. Good to speak with you.
Always good to speak with you, my friend.
You shot me today. I had no idea you were recovering from COVID, and 3 or 4 months. Is that what you're?
Yeah, nearly 4 months. And the odd thing was, but my doctor has told me this is possible. Whenever I had my active case, I had 0 symptoms. And then at the beginning of February, it was like somebody dropped a load of heavy bricks on me and went to the doctor, a couple of rounds of blood tests. And after he ruled a lot of other things out, he saw that I had very high levels of COVID antibodies in my system and diagnosed long COVID. And so it's been a struggle most days. I'm doing a little better. I'm getting a little strength back, but it's been kind of frustratingly slow.
To our audience, Claire has been a long-time friend and supporter of Comfortably Zoned, and the least deserving of this kind of crap. I'm shocked, and I'm really saddened that you're going through it. I hope you are continuing to recover, and there will be light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, if nothing else, it's a good lesson in patience.
Okay. Are you able to get out during the day?
Yeah, I still go to my office at least a few hours every day, and luckily you can accomplish a whole lot in the kind of work I do as a county commissioner by phone, by Zoom, by email. So, and occasionally I'm able to do some kind of a social event, but it's just kind of like your motor's only running on 4 or 6 cylinders instead of 8.
I got you. Again, continued recovery and love and luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about the book, if you don't mind.
Glad to.
You read it, completed it recently. I'll ask you a few questions. Did you hate it that much that you had to call and complain?
No. You got it all wrong, Ralph. I loved it that much that I had to call and talk about it. And why I love it so much.
Let's blame George Grimm for the book. He put it together at least 50%, and let's give him a little credit for the things you liked. You could blame me for the things you may not have liked. Let's start with what impressed you the most about my book.
Well, I love the whole spirit, the whole tone, the subject matter, of course, the greatest game ever, baseball, and that it just really feels like an extended conversation among friends, friends who have been part of this game from different aspects, but who all share a passion for and a love of the game. And, I especially when people are kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, and one person's comment leads to another's interesting observation. So I'd say that's what I liked best.
Beautiful. Let's talk about your baseball fandom a little bit, and how you developed the kind of attitude that would like a book about baseball. If
Sure.
You've been on the show a number of times, and if it seems like we are repeating ourselves, so be it. There's a lot of people who haven't heard you. And how did you become a baseball fan in the first place?
Well, I'm 62 years old now, and I trace it back to the summer of '69 when I fell in love with the New York Mets, seeing the impossible dream becoming a reality. I don't know what led me to start following the game, because neither of my parents were passionate fans, but somehow I just really caught on with the story of these underdogs who rose all the way from last place, or in '68, I guess it was next to last place, to the championship of the world. And then, I started more comprehensively following baseball in the years ahead. And then, as I saw the subject of baseball history come up in news articles, broadcasts, I started exploring the history of the game and really found such amazing characters, amazing people, amazing stories that I just kind of fell down the pit, and I've been there ever since. 50 years later, here I am.
Well, you picked a wonderful year to start following it. 1969 was absolutely amazing. That's the only way you can describe it. And one of your heroes, Gil Hodges, is most responsible for that. Am I correct?
Absolutely. As I followed the Mets more and more, and then have read about them in the years after, to a man, like I've never seen on any other team, the players on that team have said, we would not have won it without the leadership of Gil Hodges. Gil Hodges, in addition to having a great playing career, mostly with the Brooklyn Dodgers, was, like my late father, a combat Marine with the U.S. Marines in the Pacific in World War II, and so maybe I felt some kind of connection there. But I learned that this man, he took a clubhouse full of mostly very young kids in their early and mid-20s and instilled in them the confidence that they didn't have in themselves, that they were equal to any other team on the field, including the mighty American League champions, the Baltimore Orioles. And with his striving for and really demanding excellence, the very best out of his players, he pushed them to the very top.
Absolutely. And you couldn't have picked a better hero as a man, let alone baseball. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say that's what I try to capture in the book, is the humanity of these individuals, players, coaches, sports writers, authors, and just fans, and how they were. So, am I breaking up, you say?
No. You're coming through fine.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If baseball wasn't your passion, and if the stars didn't lead you what with your parents not being baseball fans and what have you, it was more of an accident that you became a fanatical Met fan or a fanatical baseball fan. What would have been your interest if you didn't have baseball, or what would have been your passion? It would have been something.
I'm sure, but I'm not really certain as I think about my other passions in life. Certainly for a while I followed the NBA, my beloved Portland Trail Blazers, and then what they pulled off in 1977, winning the league championship in only their 7th year of existence, and being an also ran before that. But, you know, as much as I enjoy the game of basketball, I don't feel the depth of passion for it. You know, I love old movies, I love classic TV, but I'm just really not sure what would have taken the place of baseball in my life if I hadn't discovered it.
Okay, I can assure you, because of the way you handle things, that whatever it was would have been with the passion that baseball allows you. It would have been something. You might have been the governor of Oregon by now.
Yeah, perhaps, but that's you know, that's a profession, and that is something I have dreamed about in my life. That you know, whether I could sometime rise to state office, but I've had a wonderful almost 20-year run as a county commissioner and thoroughly enjoyed that, especially the ability to help individuals and groups of people who have been, I think, really neglected by the system. But, you know, baseball is a wonderful escape for me. And, you know, watching the game, reading about its history, talking baseball with friends, playing Stratomatic baseball, it has really been all-consuming, all-encompassing in a very positive way.
You mentioned Stratomatic baseball. It's basically a simulated game, a computer game or a dice probability game. And I did a chapter in my book, because I'm such a game player, if you will, as well. I wonder if that chapter, if you can identify your love for fantasy baseball, simulation, dice baseball, call it what you want. Did you identify with some things that were in the book?
Oh, definitely. And you talked to some other people very passionate about baseball simulation games, including Gabriel Schechter, who's become a real life friend as well as a Facebook friend. You know, I think the appeal of the baseball simulation games is, well, one of the appeals of baseball in general is fans love to second guess the manager and say, well, if I had been in charge, I would have done this instead of that. And in the simulation games, you get to be the manager. You get to set your lineups, set your strategy, decide when a reliever is needed, a pinch hitter is needed. And that's just, at least for me, and I know for other people, you know, very fun, relaxing, both stimulating and relaxing at the same time, if that makes sense.
Okay. Do you think you would have made a good manager based on your skills and how you handle things in dice baseball?
Perhaps, but you know, for all my love of the game, I never could play it very well at all. And I know most coaches and managers come from the playing ranks. So in reality, I think that would have been extremely unlikely. But who knows? Maybe I could have made my way into a front office. I could see doing that and working my way up the chain, and that could have been a very fun and satisfying career as well.
Okay. I'm going to ask you about the minor leagues in Oregon.
Yes.
And there's the Northwest League, which I covered for Topps baseball cards for like 14 years in the 80s and 90s. And I'm wondering if you have had any interaction with that league.
As a spectator, definitely. Very first time I ever saw baseball in person was during the 5-year run of the independent Portland Mavericks from 1973 to 77. Like I said, even though my dad wasn't really a passionate fan, when I asked him to take me to games, he said, "Oh, sure." And, the Mavericks were outlaws. They were the ones who didn't follow the rules. Everybody else did. They brought back a 36-year-old Jim Bouton who had been out of baseball 6 years to begin the trail of his comeback that eventually led him back to the majors in 78. I've seen a handful of games of the unfortunately now defunct Salem Kaiser Volcanoes. They had built a very nice minor league stadium there. There's also one in Hillsboro for the Hillsboro Hops, which are continuing as a member of the Northwest League this year. And I've been to several Hops games, and yeah, it's fun to see. These are guys who haven't yet had the polish of several seasons of professional baseball, so they make mistakes that young people are prone to, but they play with a lot of energy, a lot of passion, and in most cases, you get at least good glimpses of why they were signed to organized ball in the first place. Oh, my best memory of that goes back to 1977, the last season of the Mavericks and the Walla Walla Padres, a Class A club for San Diego. I had read in the papers about this hotshot rookie who people seem to think was destined for stardom, and I got to watch his acrobatics on the field a couple of times, a young man named Ozzie Smith.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When you say acrobatics, that's not a pun, because he was, as Casey Stengel would have said, he's a blankety blank, what's the word I'm looking for?
Acrobat. With glove, maybe?
Yes, yeah. Acrobat. He was great.
I'm sorry. Casey also said that about the great Brooklyn Dodger third baseman Billy Cox.
Yes, he did. And that's the next thing I would have asked you is, are the Dodgers the team that you studied when you were studying the history of baseball?
They were my main gateway into baseball history. When I started reading adult baseball books, I kind of got spoiled. I think the early books I read were The Glory of Their Times,
Ritter?
The Ritter, The Summer Game by Roger Angel, who just passed on at age 101, and Roger Collins, The Boys of Summer, which is such a wonderful introduction. I'm sad I didn't get to live through it but not only those exceptional Dodger teams that dominated the National League for a decade, but the whole atmosphere in which they played and the relationship between the players and fans that I think has been like no other in the history of the game. And also how guys like, Hodges, Jackie Robinson, Carl Furillo, Carl Erskine, and more were just, amazing human beings as off the field as well as being great, great players on the field. And so I really fell in love with their history, and that, I think, led me to further pursue the broader subject of baseball history.
Let me ask you if Branch Rickey, Mr. Rickey, and Jackie Robinson were in a different city, they made a different city but Brooklyn, could have they made it work?
Perhaps, but really, I think Brooklyn was the ideal city for it to happen. I mean, talk about down to earth, no nonsense people who judged you on your ability to do the job. That once the Brooklyn fans embraced Jackie Robinson as one of their own, and that seemed to happen pretty quickly, that they were behind him in a way that, to a level that I'm just not sure very many friends, very other fans would have been able to do or would have chosen to do.
What about the city made it all possible? One thing about the city of Brooklyn.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the best examples, maybe the best example in this country. We talk about the American melting pot as an idea, but sadly it hasn't been practiced in many places. But it just seems like in Brooklyn, immigrants coming from all over the world, especially from Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, that folks, well, they didn't necessarily forsake their earlier heritage, that they truly embraced each other as a community, looked out for each other, and I think that was reflected in their love affair with their baseball team.
Okay. One of the things we talked about in the book, especially in the last chapter, is what's happening to our game. And
that's a tough subject for me because it's a sad subject. Younger people might call me an old moss-backed so-and-so, but many things.
Just tell me you're younger than Tycho, whatever it is.
But just one of many
that
things.
Old guy, it could be me with a beard and stuff.
Yeah.
Aren't I lucky? Look at it that way. And to be serious for a moment, when people say old, I think that's a compliment and terrific to be old. So far, I have all my marbles. I keep them in a little bag of marbles, as a matter of fact. And I have them all, but they're smaller than they were. Let's put it that way.
I will remember that. And just one example of what I hate has been happening with baseball is once the National League and American League had true distinct personalities, and that has just been almost completely blurred, and I'm sure someday, probably within our lifetimes, we'll just see an American conference and a national conference. I miss the days when The National League was known as a fastball league. The American was known as a breaking ball league. The 50 years we had when there was a DH in the American League, but not in the National. The American League umpires wore the outside balloon protector, and the Nationals wore the inside protector, and the two league umpiring crews were separate. And there are other things along those lines, but
hey,
I think
you had the competition between the two leagues that was manifested in great all-star games.
Oh, yeah.
And it was at a time when the all-star game was an exhibition game, but it was played with all the fervor, all the intensity of a regular season game, or of a World Series, not just a regular season game. I miss that. And do you remember when there were two All-Star games played in the same season for 2 or 3 years? There were two.
Yeah, that was just a little before my time. I was alive during those years, but 3, 4, 5 years old. I wasn't following the game back then, but
okay.
Yeah, I believe they did that to boost the player, the player pension fund.
Okay.
And
yes, indeed. That specifically for that, because all the money, all the proceeds allegedly went for that. Claire, let me ask you this. And I go back to the final chapter of the book. I want to credit some of the people that were in it.
Sure.
Alan Blumpkin, George Case III, Hal Bach, Heshy, as I call him, and who else? I'm leaving somebody out. But we discussed many of the things that we don't like about the game. And looking back on the book, I might have shortchanged it. What are some of the things that you do look at the game and like?
Oh, I think the game is being played at a very high level. The average pitcher has a velocity today that most pitchers in the 70s, maybe other than Nolan Ryan, could only dream of. And with the modern nutrition and conditioning techniques, there have been a whole, and unfortunately the steroid era, which I hope we don't dwell on, but there are guys who are regularly mashing the ball, a lot of them, in a way that I think also was unheard of in the 60s and the 70s. I remember 1977, it was a big deal that George Foster hit 52 home runs for the Reds that year, because I think it'd been a decade or more since that even happened.
Right. Who was the Dodger, a little trivia, with the most home runs in the 50s? Not just the Dodger, the ball player.
Oh, yes. Duke Snider, and I bet who number 2 was, also a Dodger.
Gil Hodges.
Bingo. Yep.
Tell me something about Gil that we may not know as fans.
Oh, gosh. I have read, I've absorbed so much about Gil, but, when he was growing up, he didn't entertain any kind of dream of playing baseball or any other sport professionally. His dream as a young man growing up was to be a high school teacher and athletic coach.
Whoa, that's a great answer to the question. Had no idea that he didn't have aspirations to play professionally, and he came up as a catcher, as a matter
That's
of
right.
fact. And the only reason he didn't continue that career was Roy Campanella. And,
Yeah, when you've got a guy like Campy waiting in the wings in the minors, and they really didn't have a permanent solution at first base. As a rookie, Jackie Robinson played first during the 47 season, and from all I've read, he played it competently, but by moving Jackie to second, Campy behind the plate, and Gil to first, that was really the last move that gelled in creating the incomparable Boys of Summer.
And the creator was Mr. Rickey, who we talked about.
Exactly.
Can you tell me something that you picked up in your reading that about Mr. Rickey that we may not know?
Oh, gosh, where to start? I mean, this was not just a great baseball man and baseball mind, but a true Renaissance man. More than once, he was encouraged to run for public office, like perhaps governor or U.S. senator from Missouri. He has maintained a great affinity for the world of higher education through his life, and very well could have ended up a university president if he had chosen to follow a different path.
He was a true genius, and I don't throw that term around loosely, but he was responsible for an incredible amount of innovations. I don't know if you remember seeing pictures of his spring training paraphernalia.
Yes.
He had batting practice, cages, and all kinds of stuff to improve a player's development. And
all right.
I think that was great, but it pales in comparison to his bringing Jackie into baseball. One of the people I talk with in the book a lot is Peter Golenbach.
Yes.
And you mentioned Boys of Summer, but a great book, Boys of Summer. In his book about the Dodgers Bums, his interview with Mrs. Robinson, if you'll excuse the pun on that way, I was going to break into song for a second. That's another thing that happens. I can't think of her first name. Rachel Robinson.
Rachel Robinson, yeah.
And he talks about the ordeal that Rachel and Jackie went through just to get to spring training in 1947.
Yep.
And if you are interested in a bibliography of the bibliography on this show, please read that interview in Bums. And I think it captures what they went through and their plight better than anything. So, Peter Golenbach is also one of the two people that I respect enough to have write the foreword or asked to write the foreword. And Mark Luttrell, big league pitcher for a long time and closer with Kansas City and St. Louis, who I got to know as the Topps representative shortly after his baseball career culminated. And I got to meet him, and that's one of the thrills of my life because he is a real person. And,
Yes.
not that a lot of the people I met weren't that, but I'll tell you Mark Littell's story that brings he and I together. I ran a nonprofit for kids called People Care for Daycare in the 80s. And I kind of ran it into the ground, but the mission statement was to take care of children and make sure they got what they needed to grow up properly. And one of the things was books.
Yeah.
And Mark Littell's mom was one of the first members, if not the first member. She was a nurse for the Head Start program. And we talked about books and kids and what it takes to raise kids right from the get-go. So love Mark Littell. Want to thank him again for writing the foreword, and Peter Golenbach, who said that the book was written brilliantly. I am still glowing. He said that after reading it in August of last year, and I'm still glowing from that. George agreed with me. Who are we to blow against the wind? Yeah. It is really a good book.
It really is, yeah.
And that you enjoyed it and that you got something out of it makes me very happy.
Well, thank you, Ralph. It is an excellent read. I'm glad to support it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Claire.
Thanks,
I
Ralph.
can't tell you how much I enjoy your company. It's going on 5 years of you and I talking from time to time, and let's continue with another 50 years.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. We'll break all kinds of records, and if you think I'm old now...
Yeah, we've got to make it into Carl Erskine age bracket, still vigorous and with it, and all our marbles into our 90s. Wouldn't that be nice?
Ironically, you mentioned Carl Erskine. Peter Chunk, a mutual friend of ours, had an interview that I put in the book because he's a comfortably zoned guy, and he had an interview with Carl Erskine, and Carl was amazing.
Yeah. He is an amazing man. I was glad that through a mutual friend, I was able to actually meet him and spend the morning with him about 5 years ago. He's just an absolute treasure.
And he was a big advocate of Jackie coming up. And not all Dodgers were, not all humans were, not all ball players were. I'll close by just saying, to put Jackie's life into perspective, Martin Luther King called him, Jackie, the godfather or the grandfather of civil rights. When they tried to bestow that honor on him. And that's how important Jackie's breaking through was to society, not just baseball.
Yep.
But as I've always said, baseball is a microcosm of life.
Exactly.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Life might be a microcosm of baseball.
Yeah. I can see that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Claire. Great interview. I'm thrilled that you came on.
Thank you. It was very enjoyable.
Beautiful. Be well. Continue to get better if you would.
I'll make you a promise that I'll keep working on that.
That's all I can ask. Just try.
Okay.
All right. Thank you again, Claire. Claire Elizabeth Hall, Oregon supervisor. Whoa, I'm impressed, Claire. But I'm impressed by your heart.
Thank you, my friend.
And your courage. We'll get into that another time. If we haven't already, you are a courageous person.
Now I'm blushing.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to end it. Thank you for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The show is Comfortably Zoned in a Vat o' Pine Tar. The podcast about the book, which is a book about mostly interviews from podcasts. So what goes around comes around. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll be back shortly. Adios and happy trails. The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.